everyone. My name is Marcia Willis, and it is my pleasure to welcome you to workshop number 17, entitled Through My Eyes, Reopening a Victim Case File. If you had intended to attend a different workshop, you can access the other 3 concurrent workshops by clicking on the gray bar entitled Schedule up at the top left of your screen. You can access all of the workshop descriptions by clicking on the link to the program book, which is posted in the chat book on the right. Before I introduce our presenter, I want to take a second to explain a couple of other features that are on your screen. You'll notice the chat box on the right. If you have a question for the presenters, go ahead and type it in the Ask a Question section below the screen. You also may see a polls selection, which would be available to you if the presenter wants to give you a poll or a survey to fill out. At the end of this presentation, a green button, or the kind of aqua-colored button entitled Evaluation, will appear on the bottom of your screen with a link to the evaluation for this session. And you're going to need to complete that evaluation in order to save or print your certificate of attendance. If there are handouts, you can access them by clicking on the links provided in the chat. The recording of this presentation will be available on the screen the moment the live presentation ends. And the cool thing is that you can watch the recording of this session all the way through January 31st of 2021. There are counselors available if you should get triggered during the session, and you need to be aware that there are some potentially triggering things that will be discussed. And if that should happen, you can, the phone number to call to get connected with a counselor is 303-281-9215. And this number is posted in the chat box. And also, if you watching the recording of the session, you can call Colorado Crisis Services at 1-844-493-8255. If you are experiencing difficulty viewing the session from a technical standpoint, we have staff available to help with the technical issues. Call the C.O.V.A office at 303-861-1160, and tech support will be available to help you. That number is also posted in the chat section. Now it is my pleasure to introduce our presenter, Heather Smith. Heather Smith is an artist, an entrepreneur who's become a speaker and an advocate for victims' rights. She is a crime victim survivor and has firsthand experience with the flaws of the justice system towards victims and their families. After years of having to confront her own injustices, she wants to use her story to help aid in victim services as a way to put a face to the problems that surround victims in the aftermath of abuse. Heather is recognized as a mixed media artist who has exhibited her work all over the world. She's used her art as a platform to share her story, and she hopes that she can be of help and be a voice to help those who cannot be a voice for themselves. And Heather, thank you so much, and I'll let you get going on this.
Thank you, Marcia. Hello, everybody. So this is kind of a new experience for me, but I am really glad that everybody is here today. It looks like there's a lot of people, so I'll get started. So I hope that everybody is aware that there might be some graphic content. Okay, so when the system fails, it becomes like a butterfly effect, and the impact is uncertain. This is my story, and everything I'm about to show you is 100% preventable. I say 100% preventable because my story started a very, very long time ago. But I'm going to try to get through as much of it as possible, and if I don't, you can always contact me afterwards, and we can definitely chat about it. So part 1. I'm a trauma survivor, and I have a master's in re-victimization. I'm only here to show you what happens when something goes against the procedure and when the rights of victims are ignored or overlooked. What are the consequences? So what are the consequences when the little things that cause the butterfly effect, that one little moment that you forgot to do something, or you didn't reach out, or who knows what it is. I mean, it's a family member or it's in your job. What happens? I'm not here to teach you the law. I'm not here to teach you how to apply it. I'm not here to show you how to use it. That is not my profession. I don't think I'm an expert in the field on any of those things, but I am an expert in mine, and that is definitely re-victimization. So I'm going to be using my own file. This is something probably new for everybody. I don't expect many victims actually share their file, and so it is quite an experience. So these are all from my police files, actually, straight from them. The scan came from the police department. And I'm sure that if you work in the police department, then you've seen things like this. So basically what I wanted to do was to show you a little bit about what happened. And if you haven't ever gotten a chance to look at a victim's file, it's right here. And you'll be able to go back to it. I'm going to share my PowerPoint with everybody. So basically, this is the first initial report. This is Officer C.O.V.A, and he is definitely one of the heroes in my story. But upon arrival, I did not immediately hear anything in the location. He goes on to talk about how he shows up at the trailer I was living at. And basically, the worst part of this whole thing, and I don't know if you could see it, but at the bottom, this is something I didn't read until just a couple years ago. I had no idea because I couldn't remember. But he said, I made my way back, opened the back door, on the west end of the home. Standing next to the door was a young boy wearing only his underwear, standing in blood, basically. I remember looking over at my son because we were up at the courthouse at the time when I read this paper, and I said, "Was that you?" And he just shook his head at me. "Yeah." And I went, "I don't remember that." So long story short, and I'm going to kind of click through these things, and these are just snippets of his report. Basically, this happened to me in 2013. I was brutally beaten and stabbed. And it made the news, and I can show you right here on my PowerPoint. It basically made statewide news here in Wyoming, and it was pretty horrific. And I can tell you something about victims' rights that I didn't know then that I wish I did, is that they are so important because you don't realize how much they will affect somebody's life later. I can tell you that being a victim has been something undescribable. I went from I had a job. I worked as a bartender for 5 years. I had lots of friends I lost my job because of this. Because of all this media that went stirring around the town and around the state. They let me go. So I no longer had a job. And this is what my face looked like. And it looked like that for 5 months. And basically, and I don't know if I can blow it up, but it's kind of blurry. But right here on the first part of that police report, it says aggravated assault, but it also says attempted murder. He did not go to prison for attempted murder. But what happened that night, my kids don't ever like to talk about it, and I can understand that. And a lot of people don't talk about what happened to them if they've ever been put in this position. But I can tell you one thing that I remember, and I remember him beating me so bad that I just curled up into a ball, basically. He took a foot-long kitchen knife and he lunged at my face. He was going to stab my face. And I reached up and I put my arm up and I actually blocked him from stabbing my face. And he went through my arm, and you can see through the pictures that it was pretty bad. And it's the most horrific thing about that entire situation is I can remember getting on the stretcher as they were taking me out of the house. And I seen my 2 small little children just looking at me like, "What's wrong?" And I'm looking at them and I'm going, "It's okay. Everything's fine now. We're fine." And we had been through 2 years of abuse from this man. And they're looking at me like, "You're crazy. You're crazy." And I'm going, "It's fine. It's fine." I didn't actually see my face till the very next day. So I couldn't believe that it was that bad. You know, he had actually fractured the first part of this part of my nose, and it was just absolutely horrible. And it feels like now, looking back, I always tell my kids it was the best day. And they look at me like I'm crazy. Well, I say, because it was the last day. It was the last day that anybody ever hurt me like that. So then we kind of come into a different part of what happened to me. This is an email from the district attorney here. And this is a list of witnesses. And so this whole thing stretched out for quite a long time. I'm trying to like ram a whole lot of stuff into like a half an hour here. So mind me, I'm trying to rush. But basically, she was ready to go. She wanted to put him in prison for 12 years. And I didn't see any of this until 5 years later. But basically, it's an email to my stepfather. My stepfather is a very prominent attorney here in Wyoming. And she's telling him about the case. And on the other side, you see there's a list of witnesses, and he's here on the list of witnesses. And I don't know law very well, but one thing I do know is that's probably not a good idea. He was using all these emails and stuff were actually used later, and I'll get into that. But I just kind of didn't understand what was really going on. These are a couple more of my court record, like the court records that were going on. My son was going to be a witness, and the other side didn't want him to be a witness. And what I know is that in 2014, basically, this man got a 3-year sentence, and it was supposed to be 12. It was supposed to be attempted murder. And the feeling of that was just hopelessness. Like, why did I even try? Why did I even do everything that I did? Because he was just going to get let off anyway. So I'm showing you certain things because it's important to remember that every little piece of evidence or every little thing that people do, it makes an impact later. What people don't know is 15 days after I was beaten and stabbed, I actually signed a guardianship paper because I had no idea what was going on. And I'm pretty sure I have a slide of that. But my stepfather took me down to an attorney's office here in town, and he said that I needed a guardianship for my children. And I didn't really understand what guardianship meant. And my face was black and blue. And he definitely, I don't know how to explain it, except for he inserted himself in really weird ways that don't make a lot of sense. And so what I was just showing you was actually where my son gave a forensic interview, and there's a big blank spot, and I can't really go back to where I was. I think, let's see if I can. Oh, right there. So this big, huge black spot, I don't even know what it says, but this is where my son is testifying and giving a forensic interview, but my stepfather's there in the room. That made no sense to me. I mean, forensic interviews, as far as I knew, were supposed to be private, and they were supposed to be confidential. And here's my stepfather sitting right here in the entire one. And it didn't make a lot of sense to me, but when they plea bargained out for trial and my son was no longer going to be a witness on the stand, and I just didn't really understand what happened to me at that point. Everything just kind of was a blur. So that's where I'm going to stop for a couple of questions, because I know that I kind of just threw a bunch of information at you guys all at once. Like I said, I can upload these later, but I'm just going to go ahead and stop right there and maybe ask some questions.
Are there some questions?
Okay.
If you have a question, please put it in the Ask a Question section at the bottom of the screen, and we'll get that to Heather.
Okay, and I'll just switch this over. There we go.
Okay, well, there will be another opportunity in a little while to ask questions, or you can put them in there anytime while she's speaking, and we will get to them in a bit. Oh, here's a question. Wait 1 second.
Okay.
Why was your stepdad involved? That definitely doesn't make sense.
I agree with you. That is the question of the day. So he is going to be weaved throughout this entire story, and I'll come to that at the end. But, he was very involved in my life and my children's life, but he didn't really come involved until I had children. Actually, we didn't even like each other up until my oldest son was born. I'm a what do you call it? I'm a girl with a silver spoon in my mouth who ended up on the streets. So I ended up leaving home at about 17 years old, and my stepfather got involved, about 6 years prior, but he never really wanted anything to do with me until I had children. Well, when this all happened, he was closely involved. Like, everything was kind of weird that he was talking to the DA at the time, the prosecutor, and he was in the forensic interview. And I didn't really put anything together until later. And so I'm going to get into that a little bit later, but that's a really good question. So kind of everything that I'm giving you right now, I'm kind of hoping you guys are going to pick up on a few things, because it's the way I had to look at it. I had no idea what was going on. And so I had to figure this out. It's kind of like a mystery game, you could say.
We have a couple more questions too.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah. One is, did you file a DCJ complaint?
What is a DCJ complaint?
A Department of Criminal Justice?
I have actually thinking that did I file? I don't think I have filed one. I didn't know that you could file that, but I know that you can for like victim services, but I was unaware that you could do it for that. So we're learning. How's that?
Okay. There's several. There's about 9 questions now. So
that's fine. I figured they were going to start coming. They're going to start coming more after you see this next part. Trust me.
Okay. Well, we'll just move through this, and then if you need to handle them later, we'll just postpone the right order of your.
I would love to hear from everybody, even after this. How's that? Because I'm willing to hear the advice. Trust me.
So did an advocate help you navigate the system?
No, they did not.
Why can't you see? Why couldn't you see as the parent?
Why can I see as the parent?
That's the question. Yeah.
I'm trying to understand. So maybe because I don't exactly. You're talking about the blank screen? Yeah, exactly. Why couldn't I see that? I've actually requested my records a couple times, and that's what I get. There's a lot of things in this that you're going to go, whoa, how is that even possible? Well, I have a pretty unbelievable story, and it's not stopped. This is just continuing. So
right. So why did they not pursue attempted murder? It was definitely an SBI or serious bodily injury.
Yeah, it definitely was. And I'm pretty sure, and I guess I might have not got those slides in there. Hopefully they're in here somewhere, but I have slides that'll show you where I had the mark from the knife. He actually took the knife and he stuck it to my throat and was trying to kill me. He was going to kill me. So I don't know.
This is clarify if the abuser was a boyfriend or a husband. Did you have children together? If so, how many? I think I might have missed that.
That's okay. He was a boyfriend. And he actually spent time prior to this. He lied to me about it. He spent 7 years behind bars for aggravated assault against his last girlfriend. Well, I didn't really know that. So he was just a boyfriend. The father, he hasn't been in the picture for a very long time.
Also, what was your history? Was there past abuse, escalating child abuse?
Yes, and that is something that I do want to get into, and I'm going to actually make that a part of the end. How's that?
Okay, and we got a couple more, and then we'll let you get on with.
Okay, no problem.
We'll do here. Okay, what is the best and worst things a victim advocate can do in the early stages?
The best thing you can do is never leave them alone. Don't assume that they know, because they probably don't. The best thing you can do is call them. Check up on them. If you haven't heard from them, email them. And if they're not answering, you might have to go see them. I really think that if people just don't realize how much they're just being there helps, because I had no clue what to do. No clue. And I wish more than anything that I would have had somebody who knew what they were doing there at the time, because my rights now, well, they're kind of floating out the wind. How's that? Because everything's over. Everything's done. So, and the worst thing you can do is ignore it, or don't do that little itty bitty thing that you thought you should have done. Do everything from step 1 to step 10 and do it all. So.
What agency provided the forensic interviewer, and did you follow up with them, and why was that allowed? As only the forensic interviewer and the child are allowed in the room during the interview.
That is a very good question. And you know what? We're going to actually get into that one again because there's another forensic interview that comes up in my story, and it's with my son.
And then one other last question here is who reported to who reported to the police or called 911?
I did. Thank God I was able to get my phone out of his pocket because he was keeping it. And this was after he dragged me down the hallway and tried to slit my throat. And I ended up getting my phone. And I don't know how or why he let me keep it, but I called 911 and I whispered, "Help me."
Yeah.
And Officer Tafoya showed up. And, you know, Officer Tafoya, I'm just going to give him a little nod, okay? Because this man chased him on foot for 3 hours on foot.
Wow.
And he came to the hospital. And you know what he said to me? "I got him." That's a victim's advocate. So.
Yeah. Well, let's let you get on with your story, and we'll come back and revisit with a few more questions later. Thank you.
Okay. All right. So I'm going to get going. And I know that this might be really confusing to people. I'm just showing you my file. I'm showing you how it happened. And this is real. And so I don't want to confuse anybody and I don't want to anger anybody. I just want to show you what happened. So I'm just going to keep going. And like I said, if there's any more questions after this, I am all ears and all open to talk to anybody. Okay. So part 2 is welcome to Wyoming. For those of you that are from Wyoming, hello, my native friends. I love this state, but I can tell you one thing that is unbelievable is what you're about to see. About 4 years later, I ended up being in a courtroom one day with my son. He got into some trouble, and the lady, the judge at the time, she ends up telling me, "Well, I've known you your whole life," and da 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 da, and I just kind of looked at the judge and I'm like, okay, you know, and she's like, "Hey, oh, sorry, my dog's barking. I hate it. Anyway, so she's like, "You're just a biological parent. I don't even know what you're doing here." And I looked at this lady and I went, "Whoa, I'm just a biological parent. What are you talking about?" Well, it turns out I lost custody of my children completely. I had no rights to my children. This was 4 years later. I kind of just put up some crime victim stats about Wyoming. We don't have a lot of people, but we definitely have our fair share of crime. But anyway, fast forward to that. Here's the judgment and sentence paperwork from when he was judged or when he was sentenced. And so later when I went back to look at all of this paperwork, because what happened that day after court with my son, I went home and I called my mom and I said, "What is going on here?" And she's like, "Well, we have the guardianship." And I said, "But you told me that it was only for emergency purposes only." It turns out it wasn't. And I guess I must have forgotten to upload that paper, and I will definitely do that later. But I signed a guardianship that I was told was a co-guardianship. Well, it turns out it was a co-guardianship between my mom and my stepfather, and it had nothing to do with me. I never heard another word about it. Not one. Never went to court. Never got anything. Nothing. Poof. I actually never heard another word of the court stuff with the man who beat me either. It just almost like it disappeared, just like that. So I went, what the heck is going on? So through this whole process with my son getting in trouble, it was kind of the best thing that ever happened because DFS got involved. And most people are going to say, "Oh, no, DFS got involved." Thank God. And I always say thank you because those people helped me get my son back, you know? So throughout this whole ordeal, the one question that I always sat here and I thought to myself was, did something happen that I don't understand? Is something going on? So I started digging, you could say. And this is part of what I found when I was digging. And if you look at this paperwork, you can see down here it says that it was sent to probation and parole, DCI, the sheriff's office. Because when at the end of sentencing, they have to send over your paperwork so that you, in Wyoming, you have to register as a victim. If you don't register as a victim, you don't get restitution. You don't get to be involved in the case. Pretty much you're just kind of out of luck. So, and right here it says, you know, this is what he was ordered. This is how he only got 3 years, that he got to serve everything consecutively. Basically, he had already done 1.5 years in jail. So he had to spend another 1.5 years in jail, and that was it. And then he'd be out. The entire time, this guy is calling me on the phone every day. He goes to prison. It doesn't stop. Continually. I'm like, I got to the point where it was about 6 months before he got out of the prison. I called the warden's office and I'm like, can you please make these phone calls stop? And the lady at the secretary goes, I don't know who you are. And I go, what do you mean you don't know who I am? She goes, you're not on the list here. I think you're going to have to write a letter. I said, write a letter to who? I'm a victim. I'm not on the list. So she said, I'm sorry, there's nothing I can do to help you. And she hung up. And I went, didn't nobody even understand that I was like nearly murdered by this guy, you know? And so I ended up, that was the first time I noticed something was extremely wrong, you know? Here is actually some, just a couple clip bits. My file is about this big here. So I tried to snip it down to a little bit because we only have an hour. But this is where he's actually rearrested. When he finally did get out, I was never notified. Nobody notified me. I was actually told by a friend. And I was terrified. He walks into my work 6 months later. Nobody was there to protect me. It caused a pretty big scene. And no one has actually ever protected me, except for I have a wonderful boyfriend now who takes good care of me, but no one protected me. I didn't know I could call for help. I didn't know that I could. I wasn't a victim, technically, because I never got registered. Well, how is that even possible? Because my paperwork got sent, right? It says there on the court paperwork. Well, I can register for Vine. It says that I can, but I'm not technically registered as a victim. Well, I don't know why I wasn't registered as a victim. So here's a little interesting tidbit fact. I guess my paperwork got lost. That's what I was told. I called probation and parole actually a couple of years ago. And I said, I just would like to know if I have maybe any restitution sitting around there because he owes me about $5,000. And I'm just kind of confused on why I never got a phone call. And the lady goes and she starts looking through her phone and she goes, oh my God. Oh my God. Your paperwork must have been lost. And I said, what do you mean it was lost? I started bawling. They've lost my paperwork? Who loses paperwork like that? Well, it doesn't make any sense to me how you lost my paper. Well, she calls me back eventually and she's like, oh, we didn't lose it. We sent you a letter. I never got the letter. I moved because I was terrified of staying where I was. I don't know that they really sent the letter or they were just covering it. I have no idea. But this was actually last year. And last year I finally emailed the lady and I said, lady, can I please become a victim? I filled out the application and everything so I can be notified if he gets out of prison. Well, when he gets out of prison again, you know, because he's in prison actually right now for beating the crap out of another girl. He's beaten up 4 since me. So I sent this message in May, I think is what it says. And they didn't actually send me a letter back until July where they said, I'm sorry that you're not allowed to register as a victim. Okay, so I can't get restitution. I can't register as a victim. But it does say that they are really glad that I have the better understanding of the services in my community. I sure do. Because I'm not a victim anymore. So that was a pretty big blow. And then right here it says this is the most recent case of what he did. He's got a pregnant girlfriend, I believe, and he beat the living crap out of her. And he is now in prison for 5 years, I think, for that. So before me, aggravated assault with a deadly weapon. It should have been attempted murder. And then now he's gone back to jail for another aggravated assault charge. There was 2 more that he got actually swept under the rug. So when it comes to probation and parole, it says that the paperwork has to be sent to probation and parole, and then they have to send it back to the court for the county clerk to be able to start collecting restitution, which means the court would have to approve of that, which means they made a plan. Well, if I have my paperwork lost, then what is this piece of paper doing? This is basically what he owes the court for my case. And where it's highlighted at, that's how much he owes me. He's got to pay victims services first. Sorry, they need their $200 first before I get mine, which is fine, I guess. I get it, sort of. But what I really don't understand about this piece of paper is if this piece of paper exists and the county clerk has it, then somebody got my paperwork. I don't know. What I'm telling you is this is just, I kept finding these things and I'm like, what is going on? So the very next thing that I'm going to go over, and this is probably the worst thing that I can think of, is this is a letter to victim services that I wrote. I had no idea I got victims compensation. I actually qualified. I got $15,000. They did send me a letter, and I never got that letter until shortly after this. This is the first of about 100 letters that I've written. I've written letters to attorney generals. I've written letters to just about everybody asking for help, because at this point, I was trying to get custody back of my children that were taken from me because I was the victim of a crime. Now, my parents are extremely rich and very powerful, and I didn't think I stood a chance at getting my children back. And but I was going to try. And unlike cases where there's the husband, and they're fighting for custody and the husband beat her, and I was fighting against my own parents who never took my children away from me. They stayed in my care the entire time. I had no clue that my rights had been taken from me. Well, I needed help. I needed a lawyer. I needed something. So I was begging for help from anywhere. Well, I lost my job due to not having, due to the crime, all this stuff. I thought I deserve when I found out I had compensation. Are you kidding me? This could help me. This could save the day. I could go get a lawyer and get my kids back. Well, that's not how it went. So this is actually the Wyoming statutes on victims compensation. If anybody is from here, they work in victim services, I'm sure you've seen this. And basically, though, I found this and I went, wow. So this was after the fact because I didn't know that I had compensation. So the first thing I did, and this will show you what I did, I sent out that letter to every single person at Victim Services. I wanted everybody to read it. I said, hey, hello, I'm here. Help me, please. And this is what I got. I got this first email that says, oh, they're out of the office. So I figured, okay. I just wait. And then she gets back to me. The thing that she said to me was unbelievable. She goes, all victims' compensation claims are open for 2 years to the date of the crime. I attached a copy of the payment summary that shows what was paid on your behalf. As I stated, our office only handles actual victims' compensation. I didn't know there was another kind. I'm confused. You can contact the Cheyenne Police Department victim advocate. Restitution and notification. Well, we already know how the restitution and notification thing went. That doesn't even going to work. Okay. So I kind of got a little upset with her, and I don't really you can kind of see where I start kind of ranting on her, but I was like, you got to be kidding me here. What are you talking about? I didn't know that I didn't get compensation. I didn't know what that even, nobody informed me of anything. I didn't understand how this process worked. I know it's a pay of last resort. I know, but I'm like, this is the last resort. I need help. I was out of work for so long. I couldn't work. We barely were able to survive. And I'm like, this is unbelievable. And now I'm supposed to fight for my children back with nothing? Like, hello. So this is the claim payment summary. And this is where it gets odd. Now, I don't know if I'm going to get scrutinized for this, and I really don't care, because the truth is the truth. And if it's me, then I'm going to be the one to say it. But here is the claim payment summary that she sent me that day. Now, I started looking through this and I said, this is off. Okay, so somebody must, from the police department, I think, actually filled out my compensation papers. Thank God. I don't know who did it, but I'm very grateful for whoever did their job that day. Thank you. Because otherwise I probably wouldn't have, I don't think any of this would exist. So what's odd about this is that it says look on the back. So we're going to look on the back. This actually was attached on the back of the master claim summary. And it says right there that my children are right there. So this is where it gets interesting. So right here on the last paper, I don't know where it went, but this is actually, it won't let me go back. Let's see if I can go back. There we go. So right here, there's actually a couple things that I noticed right off the bat. It says that I went to the eye doctor twice. I only went to the eye doctor one time, but they paid on my behalf twice. I went, that doesn't make any sense. Well, then it says here that my kids, they paid for my kids as well. And I went, how would they be paying for my children if my children are on Medicaid? Who are they paying? I don't know. So here is the letter that I got from the Director of Victim Services, and I'm sure I'm going to get scrutinized for this one too. But it's something that if you all want to read, you can. But it wasn't very nice. Like I said, I wrote letters to everybody. And she was one of them that responded finally. And she told me basically, well, I can let you read the letter later, but it wasn't very nice. And then I wasn't very nice to her back. I told her, I don't think you've ever been a victim. I don't think you understand anything. And she really didn't understand anything. She did write me back to tell me she was sorry, and she did apologize in the most crude way I could ever imagine. But what was most important about what she said, and I can kind of point out the things to you. She said basically it was against Wyoming statute for her to do any more than she could, that they didn't have enough money, and that basically my application was lost. They couldn't find it. And to explain why my kids were on my claim summary, because my kids should have been on there. She said something I would have to go back and read the letter, but it was something like it was a mistake or something. It should all be on one compensation claim. Well, you still paid out on behalf of my kids. And right here, actually, I have proof of that. They didn't pay anything for my kids. But you just said on my claim payment summary that you did. I sat there and I thought, what are you talking about? I have proof of where I paid and where they paid, and the numbers don't add up. So these are things that, I know are just unbelievable, but they happen. Well, to me anyway. I don't know about anybody else. The one thing I'm going to say is that the things that I continue to find out about what happened to me don't happen to just anybody. I don't have a normal case file. I don't have something that you can sit here and say for sure this happens to everybody. But I have this extreme case of having everything that can go wrong go wrong. I don't understand mostly all the things that happened to me, but I can tell you in the next part, I'm going to tell you what I think happened. So I'm going to go ahead and open it up for questions, because I know I just threw a whole bunch of more stuff at you, and we'll see if we can get through it and actually get through the third part so that maybe I can explain a little bit about what happened.
Okay, well, if some of these questions you've already answered, then just feel free to say that you've already addressed it. So what did the officers do that you appreciated the most in that moment, or what do you wish they would have done?
I can tell you one thing, that the officers from the Cheyenne Police Department that day and that through that entire ordeal with the crime that happened to me back then did their job. And I am most proud of that. And they did a wonderful, wonderful job. They did an excellent investigation to a point at the best I think they could. How's that? I think they were good. They did their job.
Okay, and did you have an advocate available at all to help you through this process?
No advocate. Not one.
Tara Muir and I worked at the Domestic Violence Council together, and she moved to Wyoming. Would you be interested at some point in receiving her contact information?
I would love to talk to anybody who would be willing to talk to me, because this story doesn't end, because we're about to get into something else that's still happening. How's that?
Yeah. And was there no contact order that was issued as a condition of the plea bargain?
There was, actually, and it was brought up in court that he not contact me, but he still did. Nobody did anything.
Okay, well, I think that's what we have on the questions for now. And
all right, so we'll get to moving. So,
thank you.
These are just things that I was finding out through trial through the trial that happened back then, and everything that happened. And like I said, I'm throwing a ton of stuff at you, and I've only got a few more minutes left. So I want to kind of just move along as fast as I can. I wish I had 3 hours. I probably need like a whole day. So what I want to tell you that is what's happened since then. I was fighting for my children, right? Trying to get them back. And I actually went pro se by myself for 7 months against 4 lawyers. My stepfather's a lawyer. I didn't care. I was going, I'm going to get my kids back, whether or not nobody in town would represent me. I wrote letters, I plead, I asked everybody, nobody would take my case. Well, nobody wants to go up against my stepfather, so nobody wanted anything to do with it until I found the crazy person that did. But so what happened was, this is kind of the police reports that started it all, because my parents were in full control. And I spelt psychological wrong, because that was the big thing that was brought up in the court with trying to get my son back, that I don't know how to spell. And I was a little stressed out. Thank you. And that's a freaking hard word anyway. But the point is that there was psychological abuse going on here. And my son had expressed that to the police that showed up the day, because I got a 1-day visitation with my son. Now, mind you, they kept my son from me, my youngest son. They gave me back my oldest, terminated the guardianship on him, basically threw him away, and kept my youngest son. It didn't make any sense, and my youngest son tells the cops that day that he was being mentally abused. That was the first time abuse came up. So I went back here to Cheyenne, and I filed the paperwork, handwritten myself, and I battled pro se to get my kid back. So during this whole period of time, these are a lot of things that actually were submitted to the court during this process. But you can see here, these are 2 sheets that I kind of put together. It's a list of medications that they had my son on, my youngest. And they had him on a drug called scopolamine. And I don't know if anybody's ever heard of that drug, but I'm going to advise all of you to go ahead and Google it for me when you get done with this. And you're going to find it's called Devil's Breath. Devil's Breath is a drug that they use to rape people. They use it to basically, it's a zombie drug. You will be totally fine. You'll say, sure, take my bank account and rob me and rape me, and you won't remember a thing. It's really bad. And they had my son on this for 3 years during this whole process. He still, to this day, suffers problems. But basically, he was numb throughout the whole process. Right here. So this is where things turn with me and the Cheyenne Police Department, because I requested records. I wanted records that I found out that they already had. So what happened was, and I'm going to make a long story short, what happened is through this process, I did get a lawyer. He was crazy, and he took my case, and I love him to death. To this day, he's been one of the number 1 advocates through this whole thing. And I will always be thankful for him. But when he first took my case, he actually seen a video that I had made with me and my oldest son. Because about 4 months prior to that, my oldest son ended up in a mental hospital down in Colorado. And he was there for a month. He lost it. And he was diagnosed with psychosis, and he is now on Social Security disability. So I didn't really understand what was going on, but his behavior was off. Something was off. Well, he started saying things that happened that didn't make any sense. And then prior to this, me asking for these records, he had made a disclosure to my boyfriend that my stepfather had done something extremely bad to him when he was younger. So now take it back, all the way back to the first forensic interview. You take it back. And if I started to think about everything, and here's my brain sitting here, and I thought 6 months prior, did something happen here that I wasn't aware of? I had reported it. And then my lawyer reported it. And then a doctor reported it. And then my son and my boyfriend reported it. My son still has never made a disclosure to me. There was a very crappy investigation where my stepfather never really properly got interviewed. But throughout this whole process, I'm trying to get my youngest son back. Well, they had illegally taken him from me. Well, this showed up as evidence in my case. This is a 22-page investigative report with my son's forensic interview in it, and I should never have even gotten my hands on it. How do I have it? How do I have it? Well, I have it because it became evidence in my case against me, trying to get my kid back. Well, why do they have that? Well, because my stepfather ended up getting it somehow from the police department. Well, that doesn't make sense, because right here, I requested the same file. I said, how is it that he has this report? I don't understand that he has this report. Well, clearly the lady at the records department says that is not possible. because it's against Wyoming statute, and I can't blow it up. If I could see it, I would. But she says it right here that wouldn't be 622, or I can't remember, 219, because they were going to they denied my request that I should not have this investigative report, that they did not release it. It wasn't them. Because I asked them, well, I have a copy of it. Then how do I have a copy of it? She doesn't know. She's not a police officer. My son's forensic interview was in there. A complete detailed report of everything that happened in the investigation is in this file. Not only did it show up here, but he actually, and I watched him do it, I watched the police officer hand over his 200-page file during his deposition that he didn't need to have because my stepfather wanted him to have a deposition done for a case that had nothing to do with that kid. It was for my oldest son, not for my youngest son. But I know this sounds really crazy and confusing, but I was sitting in that room that day when he was giving his deposition. I watched him get up, go copy a 200-page file with my son's forensic interview in there and hand it over to the lawyer, to the perpetrator himself, and he never even was charged with the crime. He is privy to that after being charged with the crime, not before. And the only person in that room was my lawyer, who could have actually had any sort of rights to that because he was actually my son's lawyer at the time. I had hired him to keep him out of trouble. So how that happened, I don't know. But what I can tell you is that it happened, and it never had a proper investigation. And so this is one of the last things I wanted to show you is this is actually, I got a 28-page judgment in my favor. I got my son back. I fought for 3 years. When I didn't ever actually give him up, I never had him taken away. DFS actually was allowed to come into the courtroom, which they never do, to testify for me. And I got him back. And the judge actually wrote a 28-page summary, and he said that the investigation that was done, it wasn't a very good one. Pretty much it wasn't done right. And that, because they always said I was a liar, and that my parents said I was lying about the fact that they had tricked me and coerced me into signing this document after I was beaten and stabbed. Well, the judge took my side on that too. And he said, I don't think she's ever been dishonest about it. I think she's probably telling the truth. So that was pretty good validation. I wanted to end with this quick video, if that's okay with you guys. I actually think it's pretty important. And if I'm not able to bring it up, let's see if I can. Hopefully you guys can see me, but I have a video I just want to share. It's really quick. Let's see if it'll actually play. No, probably not. Okay, so what I can tell you is that I will have it here at the end of my presentation, and you can go and you can watch it. There's a couple links. This link on the bottom is actually something I wrote, and it's a step-by-step of everything that happened and everything I just told you guys about, because I didn't have enough time and it's really hard. But the last thing I wanted to end with before I open it up for questions is I wanted to say that the end of this story, actually just about a month ago, I had, I go and I see a psychologist every day. And I was diagnosed with PTSD a long time ago, agoraphobia, a lot of things. I was diagnosed with borderline personality disorder due to trauma. I will never be able to really hold a job again. I had to apply for Social Security disability because I can't function like other people. And I can tell you that is a horrible feeling to know that I could have actually had a different life. I was never born mentally ill. I was made mentally ill by being re-victimized. So here's the little story, and I'm going to take 2 minutes and I'm done. When I was 12 years old, I was told that my mother had saved my father, that my dad had shot himself when they were getting a divorce. And I was just traumatized. I couldn't believe this. I went to go see my dad in the hospital. He had tubes in and out of him. And I didn't understand, why did he want to kill himself? This doesn't make any sense. I don't understand. Like, it tore me to pieces. I became a drug addict when I was a teenager. And, I had to get my life together. And my whole life, it was just crazy. And then come to find out 2 years ago, I find out that that's not what happened. And I have proof of that as well. My mother shot my father when I was 12 years old, and I was left in her care. And I should have not been left in her care. And I was raised by an attempted murderer who was a narcissist, who eventually kidnapped my own children. And she allowed a bad man in our life. And now I am always going to be mentally ill because of this. And so if there's anything that I can teach you today or show you, is that the little things like that you think aren't important are important. You know, I wish I had more time. I wish I could tell you more, because this story is just unbelievably crazy. I'm writing a book. I'm trying to share it as much as I can, and I will definitely. I have a website, and so you guys can. Hopefully get that link at the end. But yeah, just keep up the good work, and just remember that what you do is important. You know, and I'm so grateful you guys let me come here today and speak, and you have my gratitude for being here and learning. So thank you. We can open it up for questions if you'd like. Hello? Okay. Let's see here.
Sorry.
Muted.
I can't get unmuted.
You are now. I can hear you.
Just got you
Oh, you
back.
can. Oh, good. Okay. But now I can't see the questions anymore. But essentially it was how old were your kiddos, and whether your parents actually ever got in trouble for any of this. But I'm not able to see. Let me keep.
Well, I can tell you one thing about my parents. I am on a mission. It's time for them to be accountable for what they've done. But no, they have not. Actually, they're living the high life in $1 million home in Arizona, and they have nothing to do with me or my children.
Wow.
The story gets deeper, by the way, just so you know. I have an inheritance that this all started from. My grandfather was a very prominent politician, and he left me something prior to all this happening. And let's just say I've never seen a dime of it. And that has a lot to do with it. So
this is a most amazing story, gut-wrenching, and your courage is obviously a huge inspiration for all of us, and very, very much appreciate that.
Thank you.
About the book too when it comes out.
Yeah, I definitely, and you guys are actually going to get to see a little preview of that. That's what this link is at the bottom. It's my writing, and that's how I'm able to talk. But I talk better when I write. So
Well, you talk really well, but
thank you.
In the chat room, you can see a lot of messages to you and appreciation and heart.
I see that. I see everybody. You guys, this is awesome. See, I couldn't see you guys when I was clicking through my thing. I want to share the whole file. There's just no way. It's actually probably 1,000 pages that I have collected in my journey. And I really do believe that people should be held accountable, and trying to find the help to do that, though. I've been a one-woman soldier. How's that? But I don't plan on stopping. So everybody's going to be made aware of. So
it's staggering to look at all of the opportunities to have helped you that were missed. And
they were.
Yeah, it's just.
But I think this way, my son still has that opportunity. I have a theory, and I want to end with that. Be Batman. Okay? Be Batman, guys. And I told my son, I'm your Batman. I will not let you be me, you know? And so his story still isn't done. I still tell myself I'm going to make somebody accountable for this, I hope. But if not, I'm going to tell everybody about it, because I have my First Amendment rights. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Heather.
Thank you.
Talk to you soon.
To C.O.V.A, and you guys will be able to look at those videos. I do have online, if they want to go see some of my videos that I made through this process, you can go on YouTube and look up Emma Swan Victim. Okay.
Okay, we just have some, looks like we lost our moderator, so we have
Okay.
some
Hi.
closing
I was
announcements
no problem.
for you.
I'm just going to be typing some messages in the chat so how they can get a hold of me, and then they can
Yep.
go ahead and find the other stuff. How's that sound? Okay.
Yeah, that's fine. And I will give the closing announcements. Thank you,
Perfect.
Heather, for
No problem.
presenting for us today. And thank you all for attending Heather's workshop. The recording of this session will be available on your screen the moment this broadcast ends. You can watch the recording of this session through January 31st, 2021. Also, at the bottom of your screen, you have probably noticed the green button where you can go fill out the evaluation form. You must complete the evaluation for this session in order to access, save, and print your certificate of attendance. There is a 30-minute break on the schedule, followed by concurrent workshops 21 through number 24, beginning at 2:30 p.m., and we will see you then. Thanks a lot.